The Joe Rogan Experience.
In most of our lives, you see, we're dealing with the whole history of a species, of structures of domination, oppression. That's the history of the species for the most part. And there's moments in which there's breakthroughs, in which there's a freedom of spirit. And then you have some institutionalization of that, which is democracy. That's why democracies are so fragile and usually don't last that long, because it cuts so radically against the sense of really wanting to be free. I mean, Dostoevsky's right. Most people really are afraid of freedom. They want to defer to authority. They want to conform. And when they're introduced to freedom and it really catches hold, they say, oh my God, it's tremendous cost to be paid, but I like that. There's something about that. And they can hear it in the music. They can see it in your comic art of Priors and others. And it allows these effects and consequences in people's lives to really enrich their lives before they die.
Why do you think people are afraid of freedom?
Well, it's courage. I mean, there is no freedom without unbelievable, unprecedented, unstoppable courage. And courage is not widely distributed in the species, man.
That's a very charitable way of looking at people.
No, it's true, man. Most people rather conform. They're complacent. They're complicitous. They're cowardly.
Yeah.
They well-adjusted to injustice and want to smile and walk around as peacocks rather than cut against the grain and have to bear witness and therefore end up on a cross or, like Socrates, condemned. I mean, most of the great figures that we know.
Yeah. Well, it seems like there's more consequences for that now than ever.
Oh yeah.
Cancel culture.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
No, it's true. It's very, very true. But I mean, we live in a culture that's so corporatized, commercialized, marketized. It's all about money, 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 status, status, status. And you lose any deep sense of honor, of character. It's all about what appears to be the case. It's a culture of superficial spectacle. So it's all about image.
Yes.
You see.
Yeah.
And image is just some surface phenomena.
Well, I can't recommend your book, Race Matters, enough. And one of the reasons is because of your analysis of that. Your understanding of the superficial aspect of the pursuit that so many people are locked into from cradle to the grave. And you encapsulated that so well. And the way you worded it and the way you phrased it, it resonates so well. And I really admire this lifelong pursuit that you have for not just understanding these things, but explaining them in such a succinct way where it's absorbable. Like that book, it's in the 25th anniversary. I wanted to talk to you about it because that's the one I read. And it's so strange when you read something that's it's so current, even though it's 25 years old, it rings true. And does that feel futile, where you have the same issues that you spoke on 25 years ago, and there's very little change in those 25 years?
No, it's a wonderful, deep question. No, man, I appreciate the times that you spent reading Race Matters. But no, it's never futile, though, man. It's never futile because you have a conception of victory that is not messianic or salvific. You're not trying to save people. You're not trying to be a messiah to bring some kind of grand gospel to people. You're simply trying to touch people's lives. So when you enrich and enable a person's life, the way in which you've talked about that right there, you're already talking about the ways in which you were touched. Mm-hmm. That means there was no futility at all.
Yeah.
It's
certainly not futile to me.
The fecundity of it. And so all we can do, as human beings, is to try to inspire one another and encourage one another and enable one another, ennoble one another. And that in and of itself is what the great John Coltrane called a force for good. How do I become, based on a love supreme, a force for good in a cold and cruel world?
Based on love supreme.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And love supreme is not love in the abstract, right? It's a love of beauty in its concrete forms. It's a love of goodness in its concrete forms. It's a love of truth in its concrete forms. Now, I'm a Christian, revolutionary Christian, so I got a love of God mediated through a Palestinian Jew named Jesus, but that's tied to a justice that comes out of prophetic Judaism, right? And we know Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all of these religions for me have no wholesale monopoly on how we understand the world, because they all emerge at various historical moments. But when it comes to this love that allows us to persist in a world in which cruelty and envy, contempt, manipulation, dishonesty, and that's shot through all of us. So we're not finger pointing the name call.
Right.